wasallam, his devoted servant and his great messenger. I bear witness that there is no worthy of worship except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Allah's messenger. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second series of the IQA International Webinar Higher Education Institution Amidst COVID-19 and New Normal, Opportunities and Challenges. I would like to welcome Professor T. Basaruddin MSc PhD, President of IQA and Director of Executive Board National Accreditation Agency for Higher Education, or BANPT, Indonesia. Professor Angela Yung-Chi Ho, Professor and Associate Dean, College of Education, National Chengche University, Taiwan. Former Vice President of INCAHI and APQN. Professor Tian Belawati, Rector of Open University Indonesia from 2009 to 2017. Professor Rehan Magdi Amin, Vice Dean for Community Service, Faculty of Dentistry, the British University of Egypt. Professor Fardes Nabil Rizk, Vice Dean for Teaching and Learning, Faculty of Dentistry, the British University in Egypt. Professor Johansen Y. Eid, President of the National Authority for Quality Assurance and Accreditation of Education, NAQAAE, Egypt. And every participant from every corner of the world. Before we start, I'll read our agenda for today. First, the opening remark and keynote speech. Second, the main session of the webinar discussing the students' learning amidst global pandemic and beyond. Third, question and answer session, and it will be closed by closing and announcement. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin our webinar today with opening remark and keynote speech by Professor T. Basaruddin MSc PhD. I would like to invite Professor T. Basaruddin MSc PhD to give the opening remark and keynote speech. Professor T. Basaruddin MSc PhD, the Zoom is yours.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, good morning, and good day to everyone. Dear board members of IQA, distinguished speakers, experts, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the series of webinar held by the IQA, the Association of Quality Assurance Agencies in Islamic world. This event is the follow-up of the previous webinar that we have conducted last year in December, still using the theme of the impact of the pandemic of COVID-19 to higher education. While in the first series, our focus of attention was given to the external quality assurance agencies, today and next week, we will be focusing our attention to the impact of this pandemic to the student learning and university life. We are very fortunate to have a very distinguished speakers in this series and also next week. And also the session chair for this series. I'm really proud to introduce to you all our session chair today, Professor Johansen Eid. She's member of the IQA board and also representing as the president of the National Authority for Quality Assurance and Accreditation of Education in Egypt. And I'm really pleased to welcome everyone to this very important webinar of series number 2. In addition to that, I would like to thank also our partners, the president or the rector of Islamic University of Indonesia or Universitas Islam Indonesia, Professor Fatul Wahid, and also Professor Amani Lubis, the rector of UIN Jakarta, and Professor Aris, the rector of UIN Malang, who have been supporting this event that make it possible to be conducted by BAN-PT. Special thank also goes to Dr. Hangga and team who has been working day and night tirelessly to prepare this event to all of us. Prof. Mansur and Prof. Nurfalis and Dr. Nurfalis also has been very supporting for this event. And finally, with reciting Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I'm officially declare that this webinar is officially open. Thank you and enjoy the webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much, Professor, for the insightful opening remark. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the most awaited session for today, the first session of the of the webinar, the students learning amidst global pandemic and beyond. Without any further ado, I would like to invite our session chair for today, who is Professor Johansen Eid. But before that, let me read a short bio of hers for you. Okay, after receiving her BSc in Architectural Engineering from Ain Shams University, Dr. Johansen Eid received her MArch in 1986 and her PhD in urban planning from the University of Southern California in 1992. Since then, she has worked at the Faculty of Engineering ASU, where she has taught several courses in planning theory and practice. She has also been appointed as a visiting professor at the American University in Cairo, the British University in Egypt, and Misr International University. In addition, she has participated in curriculum development, quality assurance, and educational reform. In 2009, she became a trainer for strategic planning and in higher educational institutes. She held the position of head of the Department of Urban Planning from 2007 until 2009, vice dean at the Faculty of Engineering from 2009 until 2011, and head of the Board of Admission and Examination for the joint MSc program Integrated Urbanism and Sustainable Design, ASU and Stuttgart University. Currently, she is the head of the National Authority for Quality Assurance and Accreditation of Education in Egypt. Her research interests include the impact of socio-political and technological changes on urban form, planning theory, strategic planning, sustainability, and quality assurance in education. Prof. Eid conducted a private architectural and planning practice and held planning consulting position in some agencies in Egypt, including GAEB and GOPP. Please welcome our session chair for today, Professor Johansen Eid. Professor Johansen Eid, the Zoom is yours.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you today and welcoming you to our first session of the second series webinar, higher education institutions amidst COVID-19, new normal opportunities and challenges, titled Students Learning Amidst Global Pandemic and Beyond. Dear guests, for over a year now, the whole world has been suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic that has affected every aspect of life, and education, of course, has suffered. Coronavirus has disrupted all levels of education. Most higher education institutions are applying a hybrid or blended education. Everybody is suffering from culture shock. What have students been doing to overcome this pandemic? What are the measures that are taken to guarantee the well-being and students' learning and faculty? And what will the future of education look like? And how are students coping with these new types of education delivery? How are institutions dealing with teaching and learning and assessment? What is the impact of teaching, learning, and assessments in this new normal? And what are we going to see in the next years? All these are questions that we have been tackling and trying to address over the last few months. And as a matter of fact, I believe that these are questions that we're going to ask ourselves over the next few years as well to come, since we will not really assess the impact of what's been going on over the last few months in education, except after a few years. Today, we have 4 distinguished speakers from 3 different parts of the world. And we're looking forward to having this a great session today. Our first speaker is Professor Angela Young Chi-Ho, who is Professor of Higher Education at the National Chen-Chi University in Taiwan. She currently serves as Associate Dean of the College of Education and as well as the Executive Director of Higher Education Evaluation Accreditation Council of Taiwan. She has been involved in quality assurance practices and international research for over 15 years, including being a board member and vice president of both INQAHI and APQN, and an international reviewer of international and program accreditation in several countries, including the UK, Hong Kong, Macau, the Philippines, and Mongolia. Before we start, I would like to ask our distinguished participants that we'll conduct a Q&A session at the end. And so if you have any questions, kindly address them in the Q&A box so that we can have our panelists answer them at the end of the presentations. Professor Angela, the Zoom is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the chair's introductions, and also thank you for the IQA Association's invitations. So this really is my honors to share my experiences from my QA. I'm going to use my PowerPoint. Okay, so now let me see if I could share. It seems I am not allowed to share my PowerPoint. Can I?
Okay, wait a minute. Somebody.
Yeah. So now it's all right.
Yeah, please allow Professor Angela to share screen.
Yeah. So. Okay. Then the topic I was invited to share is about the quality assurance internally and how about to assure the quality of the teaching and learning, in particular. Us in the following years. So I would like to share you some of my observations from globally and then also the regional actions. And also probably you will be interested to know about the Taiwan case. Yeah, since we are one of the countries and the stories probably could really share how exactly the government control the whole situation. But before I start, I think I would share you some. That is the situations about the QA occur in the past 3-day case. Since the inquiry was established in the 1990s around, and this year we are celebrating the 30th anniversary. So from that, it seems almost 30 years. But however, the quality assurance in certain ways still fighting some issues. And we still hope that we could have the better solutions for all the issues have been addressed. So first of all, you could see the international education, internationalization with the massification in higher education, or even the demands for accountability will result in the disruptions and then also the incompatibility in higher education system, not just individually, I mean, so globally. Okay, those kind of the scenario and phenomena really pressures the governments to have the new policy. And this is one of the reasons. It means that the quality assurance becomes a very, very strong instrument for the many governments to assure the quality of the higher educations. But however, it seems the QA system after the 2000 in most of the Asian countries all has been established the framework, but still there is the tension still exists between the control and enhancement. How exactly the QA is to be used to control the quality, or how will be the quality assurance to be used to enhance the quality? So it's been always the issues under the discussions, and then however due to the government's policy or even the university responses, it means that is always been argued and then discussed over the past 30 years. And also that I will talk about the diversification and massification in higher educations. That also let us think about what would be the better quality assurance framework for higher educations, particularly means after the 2010, the lifelong learning is a kind of the trend and then has been discussed in most of the context. And how we're going to recognize the new providers or any learning process or even the learning outcomes. That is also one of the major issues in most of the government. We do not think it's a kind of threat, but in certain way, he really make the quality assurance paralyzed. That is what we call the quality, the global rankings, right? In certain way, though, it's still one of the instruments as to measure the quality or again accountability or the performance of the higher educations. But however, due to the different measures and then different objectives or even the standards, sometimes, okay, that is also create kind of the confusions among the quality, standard, and excellence. What exactly we think that the university should follow or even in compliance with nowadays. It means those still we cannot have the very, very perfect answers for that. So seems based on over the past 3 years, 30 years, we still have some of the issues have been resolved. But however, under the COVID-19, it seems we have the more issues that we have to tackle. So I mean, probably, I mean, our chair and the Professor Chen always mentioned about the impact, the global impact by the pandemic due to the COVID-19. So the over the 90% of the student populations, probably they cannot go to school. And then also that is about a 1 point more than the country has been affected by the COVID. It seems the schools all closed. So in all, for some study in over the past years, and it's a lot of research actually has been published. And I try to come up with the 3 key things, the challenges during the pandemic in higher ed. One is the internationalization. I think is a no doubt, because the students cannot mobile, the talents cannot mobile, and then the faculty members actually, we have been limited to certain kinds of the place. And then the other one is the inequality. This kind of the issues, it seems as they're getting more and more serious in some context, and of course the quality. So this is why we are here, and we hope that if the quality could be really assured from in a different context and in terms of the teaching and the learning. But one of the very, very important issues, and then also for those to pay more attention to, is about the use of the technology, and then how come we could see under the pandemics, the technology could really tackle some problems, and then also come up with the good solution. I think over the years that a lot of the government already make a lot of the investments in educational technology development. So over the past year, or even until right now, still many schools and the campuses are closed. So online learning becomes an alternative solutions, or an alternative mode under the pandemic, being used by most of the universities, and then also encouraged by the government. But that is not a new trend, seems that occurred very, very earlier. But how exactly is that the learning experiences it could really gain through the online? They're still being discussed in many, many ways. So one will be synchronous, the other will be asynchronous, but how exactly using the different devices, no matter from the computers, from the cellular phone, from the other kinds of the assets, and then the students could learn through online. This is the issue have been discussed in a lot of the research. So, but no matter what kind of the devices that may use by online learning, but most important thing is we hope that the online learning could facilitate the teaching learning process. And then the whole process should be very, very student-centered and should be very innovative. And most important thing is sometimes you need to be very flexible, because it's not like having the classes in a classroom. So in general, they are the 3 most of the online learning, but actually we already have the number 2. Not all the university though, but we still we use the online resources to facilitate the student learning. And the other one is the branded learning. Okay, some university they will still use this kind of thing. This is what we call is about the hybrid approach in certain way. Okay, the teachers will still, some students or the teachers will be in the class, and the student online, but they will still through the activity, interactive activity online, and the learning and assessments will be made. But now what worries us probably is about this for online learning, we all online, and then how exactly is that the quality of the all 4 online learnings could be really assured. So according to the APEC, actually they come up with some areas probably worry us, and then we still think that how we could find out the better solutions to solve these problems. I mean, the very, very first one is about a course design and content, because is well established. So this is very first one we think is because the online some of the activity, okay, some of the contents, the properties cannot be used, okay, as we did in a traditional classroom. And another one is probably we worry about the teaching and learning. This is another things we worry about, that the quality couldn't not be assured of the online learning, about the student, the teachers actually are not be support fully, and not be given certain kinds of the guidance to do the online educations, and probably not so much feedback for the students or for the teachers. And then most important thing is we worry about the teachers probably do not have the relevant skills to teach online. So particularly for some senior professors, when they are not used to do that, and then certainly they have to do that. This is a really big challenge for most of them. And then the other one, the student experience and learning environment. We worry about the online learning, how come to really engage all the students. okay, through, okay, the whole process, though we emphasize the student-centered is the focus of the online learnings. But if the class is very, very big, and then probably all students online and then studied at home, and then they might be isolated in certain way, and then how could really encourage them to interact with each other, and maybe, okay, support is one of it, okay, facility support and the learning support, and most important thing is we worry about the completion rates may not be high. And finally, maybe you worry about assessment, right? So this is one thing that has been discussed very, very often, particularly, okay, for the quality assurance perspective. Due to the whole process, we hope that the students could acquire some kinds of competency, but the online learning will really, okay, help the students to acquire those kind of competency, and how exactly they could be really assessed. This is one of the issues. And then others is about the integrity, because we worry about if there's a really students online, and then exactly that is their work. So the plagiarisms, or even, okay, how to really against the data of the appropriate behavior. Quality concerns for the online learning. But however, all in all, for the quality assurance, if the online educations will be done fully online, we still worry in general, probably there will be the 4 dimensions. We hope that those issues could be taken into the considerations. The very first one is about input. Okay, for the online educations, teachers, of course, is the key facilitators. But if they are not being exposed to the high quality learning experiences before, and how come they could understand that the potential of the technology, and then use the technology, this kind of instruments appropriately to lead the students into the virtual learning. So this is the inputs, probably will be really cared about that. And then the process, how to really admit the students, and how to really assess the students' learning outcome, and how about the content development for the online learning. And of course, if the teachers could really guide the student to learn, and then to merely finally, okay, to complete the whole programs. And then finally, of course, we may worry about if all online, and then how come that the learning, is limited to the virtual world, and with the in the traditional courses. So for the quality assurance, maybe we all cared about those things. But nowadays, still, some quality assurance agency seems they already have some experiences over the years. So they tries to come up with certain kinds of the statements, or even certain kinds of principle that the university you should pay attention to if they really want to assure the quality of the distant educations. The DIA, I think this organization, the American Accreditor, Distant Education Accrediting Commission. These organizations, over the past decades, they fully committed to the quality assurance of the distant education. And also the president, the executive directors of the DIA, being the former vice presidents of the inquiry. So she mainly focused on the few things. It means the university have to think it over if they want to. University have to apply for. And then you probably have to think about the following things. First of all, distant education, okay, should believe that require the system-wide thinking, not just the course or even a program level. So it means that how would the universities have the university-wide policy and strategy to implement the online education. This is very important. And the teaching approach, how to align your teaching approach with the discipline, because different discipline, different programs, that the online learning approach will be different. And then also he mentioned about capsulizations for the different courses should be one of the issues as well. And evidence, how about, it seems now it's been almost a year, and then would the university have sufficient evidence or the data to realize the quality of the online learning from the students' should be collected in order to make sure how you're going to develop the policy or the strategy for your for the quality assurance of the distant education. And then also she mentioned about, it means for her experiences, and then some report mentioned about the faculty roles is one of the issues, and then how you're going to facilitate the faculty members to optimize the organizational decision makings for the distant education. This is very, very important. So overall, for the distant education, the quality assurance, I think it's not just for the EQA, but for the IQA, you probably have to pay attention to the different level, institutional level that I mentioned. Okay, how about your educational purpose? Would you include the distant education as a part of it? And how about the program level, the different levels of education, the bachelor, the MA, the PhD, how you really make sure those kind of the programs, okay, online, but the learning outcome is measurable and also attainable. For some programs, okay, for some levels of education, okay, the goals will be different. But you think about how what those kind of the goals could be really achieved, and then also the learning outcomes could be measured. And most important thing, as the program level, you should probably have some principles for the learning and instructional design. Program level, and it should be actually obeyed by all the faculty members. And for the program, of course, you should have the support, sufficient educational media, infrastructure, or learning resources for the faculty members as well of the student. And of course, I think it's more detailed. Of course, they should be implemented by the faculty members. How you're going to enhance the interactions between the faculty members and the students, and then how you're going to design the activity, engage all the students in a discussion and the learning, and how you're going to design, how you're going to test the students, how you're going to assure the students' work have been done by themselves, and then integrity, definitely. I mean, those are probably, we could say, all the faculty members should take care of this part. And the program levels, of course, the program chair, okay, the college dean, institution levels, were the universal leader. So but each one of them actually should engage in these issues, and they should contribute, okay, role in the different perspective. So the Taiwan actually, I could not say that the Taiwan a lot of experience for the quality assurance of the distant education. So far, the by the very commissions, the office that been done by the Ministry of Education. But the government since the 2006 already noticed this kind of issue and encouraged the university they should develop the distant education, and then hope that all the university you want to, as soon as you want to offer some online courses or the programs, but you should have your review system. You should have the IQA system to make sure all the courses offered by the faculty members, actually the quality could really reach is the same. I mean, the most important thing is to emphasize that the quality should be the same as the regular program. Actually, the quality should not be, in certain way, lowered to have the low level. That should be the same as the traditional, the original programs. So
Professor Angela, can we wrap up in 2 minutes?
Okay, so I'm going to finish it very soon. So actually, we have some, guideline and also the ad, and then to make sure all the universities they have the facility, have the learning platform, and the tracking system. So at the end, I think, sorry, a little bit use more times, but I want to share those kind of things for all the participants. First of all, this for the IQA, okay, to ensure the quality of teaching and learning. A gradual employability and mobility. And how to ensure or integrate the functions of the qualification framework as the quality assurance system to make sure, okay, no matter this program is provided by the traditional one or even by the distant mode, I think that the qualifications are compatible. And most important thing is I want to use the 3 pillars of the quality of the online learning to all view. One is the leadership ability to promote the quality culture, and it really depends on the state ability to build the pedagogies into the virtual space. And most important, also the infrastructure capacity to develop programs and services at the program. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Angela, and thank you for keeping time. It's been wonderful listening to you and sharing with us the quality assurance disruption over the last 3 decades. These disruptions have also been complicated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Professor Angela also highlighted 3 challenges to quality assurance and education, which is the internationalization, inequality, and quality of education, which have all been challenged by the COVID-19. She also highlighted the importance of online teaching and learning and discussed with us the 3 modes of these that are currently exchanged in the world. She also shared with us some quality concerns regarding the course design, the content, teaching and learning, student experience and learning, and the learning environment, and the assessment. Finally, she shared with us the Taiwan experience and concluded with some of the important conclusions. So thank you very much, Professor Angela. And I would like to remind everybody, if you have any questions to Professor Angela, to kindly post them on the Q&A boxes. Now we move from Taiwan to Indonesia, where I would like to gives me great pleasure to introduce our second speaker, who is Professor Tian Belawati, who is former rector of the Universitas Terbuka in Indonesia. She was also president of the International Council for Open and Distance Learning in Education. Professor Belawati is a well-known figure in the international higher education field, particularly for her contribution with the open and distance learning and education. For this contribution, she has received several awards, namely the Meritorious Service Award from the Asian Association for Open Universities in 2012, and the Distinguished Individual Promoter of her ODL from the African Council for Distance Education. It would be a great pleasure to listen to Professor Tian, who will share with us her experience in ODL. Professor, the floor is yours. The Zoom is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Aid. Good afternoon, everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It is a pleasure for me to be here and to meet you all, even though it's only virtually. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the time to share what is happening in Indonesia regarding the learning amidst the COVID-19. May I now share my presentation? Okay. Can you all see my presentation yet?
Yes.
Okay. So, well, first of all, I would like to thank Angela for sharing about her observation about higher education in Taipei, which I share some of the points that she made, and I think I agree with her observations. But please allow me to focus my presentation today on the silver lining of COVID-19 for higher education from the perspective of Indonesia. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic, I think we all agree with the UN, it has been the largest disruption of education system in history, because, you know, by mid-April last year, it has affected nearly 1.6 billion learners throughout the globe, and it has affected more than 190 countries in all continents. It has closed down all schools and other learning spaces and impacted around 94% of the world student population. So never before that we have a phenomenon or an incident, a single incident that has severe effect on our educational policies, practice, as well as the daily operations of our educational system. But to talk about Indonesia, please now allow me to just give you some background about Indonesia. So we have over 270 million people. You heard it correctly, 270 million people. So when we talk number, I think we always come in the top 5 and everything. And with regard to internet penetration, we are now at around 62.6%. And the higher education participation rate is around at 33.5%. Some people argue that it has gone down a little bit during the COVID, but there is no formal data yet. And these higher education are provided by more than 4,200 higher education institutions, which are universities, higher education institutions, polytechnics, and one open university, which is my home university. So when the COVID-19 outbreak was first announced in Indonesia, it was on March 2nd, 2020. It was announced none other by the President of the Republic of Indonesia with 2 cases. And by March 20th, so in less than 25 days, 832 universities announced that they have moved their classes into online, and immediately followed by all higher education institutions in Indonesia. So we did surveys just to know how the students are accessing the study during that early time of COVID-19, and what do they think or how do they feel. So the first survey that we did it like in early April, and the data was collected only on the first 10 days. We managed to collect 1,216 respondents from students as well as lecturers and professors from all kinds of higher education institutions. So as you can see, there are state universities, private universities, non-universities, and also the open university students and lecturers. And the results show that by that time, remember, it's only like less than 25 days after the announcement of the first case, more than 80% of the respondents say that already started online learning due to institutional policy. So lecturers and students are forced to teach and learn online, ready or not ready, no question asked, for all the courses. What kind of online, we will see later. And most respondents access the online learning from home using laptop or tablet and also smartphone. And the later survey that I would report later shows that smartphone is actually the most gadget used by Indonesian learners or Indonesian students. And they said that they are using LMS, but when we ask what kind of LMS, they're using free LMS mostly Moodle and Google Classroom. And they said that the main learning materials are presented by their professors, mainly using PowerPoint, PDF, MS Word, and video taken from YouTube. So there was no time to make their in-house production video. So they're taking it from YouTube. So in here we see a lot of creativity that are under the circumstances. I think we have to thank the lecturers and the professor. And they also said that they are using a synchronous communication very heavily and mostly using Zoom. What is interesting at that early stage and also promising that 75% of the lecturers and 43% of the students said that they like doing learning online and they would like to continue doing it even if the pandemic is over. At that time, they, of course, nobody had any idea what time it's going to last, right? Hopefully, maybe months at that time. But they said, more than 70% said, but they would like to do it in the form of blended learning, as Angela already explained in her presentation, that blended is using the combination of online and face-to-face. And they said that they don't want to do it for all the courses, maybe for some of the courses only. So this service was done in the first 10 days of the the closing of the schools and universities. The most mentioned obstacle at that time mostly related to technical aspects and mostly about the connection to the internet. So even though the penetration is 62% and more than 62%, but the quality of the connection, namely the bandwidth in Indonesia, is not that great yet, right, Pak Chan? And also not evenly distributed throughout the country. Maybe in the big cities, okay, but not in the rural areas. But they like the online learning. They feel the benefits of it, and especially regarding its effectiveness, because they can always, revisit the materials in their LMS, and also because it's more flexible for them to visit, to learn, or to read the materials, or to watch the video that is given by the professors. So the second survey, after that survey, we did the second survey about 1 month after that in May. And at this time, we managed to gain more responses, more than 237,000 students, only students at this time. And these students who responded to our survey came from different level of year of study. So as you can see, from the first year until the last year of study, and mostly female. The results show that at that time, 98%, more than 98% said that they already studied online, and almost 60% said that they are ready. 15% even said that they are very ready. This is like ready and very ready in their own definition. We didn't probe what kind of readiness, what they meant. But this is what's interesting. 68.7% said that they use handphone or smartphone to access the online courses. So it's like, hopefully their LMS, they're from their university, you're also using the mobile apps. Otherwise, I just don't know how they learning, throughout the smartphone if they don't have the mobile apps for their LMS. And then 72.7%, even if they use the PC, they are connecting to the internet, catering to their handphone. So the internet connection very much rely on the quality of the internet connection through the handphone. And over 63% said that the connection are not good. And 21% even said very bad. I mean, we knew this, but having had this big percentage saying that, it's really concerning to us. Because they said they're ready, but on the other hand, they don't have, a good connection to access their study. So what kind of interaction models that the professor are using? 39, almost 40% said mostly using blended. And, about 50%, more than 50% said they're using also synchronous communication. What's interesting is only 20% said they're using the video conference application for synchronous communication. And almost 35% said they're using WhatsApp, Line, Telegram, Messenger. So it's not, the quality of those apps for learning. I mean, I know it's very handy for them, but it's also concerning for me, who has been working in the online education for more than 35 years, that they are relying on these apps for their learning. And when for people who are using the video conference, well, as I said, as we found in the first survey, Google Class and Zoom are the two most used video conference applications. There are some also other software used, but mostly Google Class and Zoom. So no wonder that Zoom income has increased very significantly during this COVID, yeah. Now, we asked them how effective, the learning is. So we asked them, how well can you learn online? Surprisingly, even though the connection is not good, even though they're connecting to their handphone and using smartphone, they claim that, they can learn sufficiently well until very well. So that is, I have some doubt on this. This is their personal opinion, right? And then we ask, how well do the professor teach in their opinion? More than 80% said the professor are teaching sufficiently well until very well. So I guess Pak Chan should be very happy about this. And this, remember, this survey was done only 1 month after their learning online, and 70% of the respondents are doing online learning for the first time. So the weakness and the strengths of online learning, according to them, mostly they said the strength of this online learning is because they don't need to go to campus. They like that. And then they like because it's flexible. They can revisit the materials at any time. So in a way, it's relaxing to them. You don't have to go to take a shower maybe in the morning, go to the campus and, sit down in front of the professor with good clothing and good manner. You can be in their pajamas, right? And 26% said it's exciting because it's a new experience. And on the weakness side, not surprisingly, 40% said that interconnection is not reliable. So we have that big problem in there. And then a significant percentage also says the professor tend to give too much tasks and assignments during this online learning, more than they did when it was face-to-face learning in campuses. Maybe that's the easy way, to assess their comprehension in what has been given in the materials. So we did another survey like 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, this survey is quite rather informal, but we would really like to know their learning preferences after having gone through online learning for almost 1 year. Yeah. And not surprisingly, and I think to me as a practitioner in the online learning, this is wonderful because more than 60% prefer blended and online learning. Without COVID, this preference will not appear because for a long time, the Open University was preaching about this and nobody was listening. Only Pak Chan was listening. Nobody else was listening seriously. So suddenly, now everybody likes it. So this is a good thing for us. So as a practitioner who has been in the field of open, distance, and online learning for more than 35 years, this is the silver lining of COVID-19, I think, for Indonesian higher education learning. Now, blended learning, when we look at the data deeper, blended learning is preferred by all students in every semester except those in semester 1 and 3. This is for further surveys because I'm curious why 1 and 3 does not prefer online learning, while the other semesters say that they prefer the blended learning. When it comes to open universities, so the Open University in Indonesia, we offer courses not thoroughly online. Students have the choice whether they want to join the online learning or the conventional distance learning, which was based on printed materials with assignments and face-to-face examinations. So as you can see, before the COVID, in 2019, the number of students who actively take advantage of our online learning system is only 110,000. But after the COVID, it increases by 73%. So it also increased the use of online learning within the Open University system. And it has resulted in the increase of the virtual classes the Open University have to manage, from only a little bit over 4,000 virtual classes to over 16,000 virtual classes in one semester. For example, for one seminar class of the master program in primary school education teacher, we have now, for one course, we have 74 virtual class. So that is like a big jump. For usually, I only have to manage like 10 classes, jump into 74 classes. So this is also for the Open University is the silver lining of the COVID-19. because for a long time we asked students to take advantage of our online learning system, but only a bunch of people did so. And now I think we didn't have to work too much to campaign about it. They came to us. So the Director General of Higher Education then also invited several professors to give testimony and to share what they think and what happened in their classes, you know. And these are some highlights that I quoted from the book that we did on the portrait of higher education during COVID-19. This was done in September last year. So this is after going through one semester of learning from home during the COVID. One point was mentioned by one of the professors that it has apparently increased creativity and innovativeness of both professor and students. That's what has been happening. For example, we have one professor who teaches dance from the Arts Institute. And then she shared with us how they have to be creative in assessing the dance movement of the students. And then another testimony, one of the professors also said that apparently, and it's very significantly, has increased students' self-confidence in asking questions and also sharing opinions. Students, he said, who were usually passive in the class are becoming more active in the virtual class. So this the green bullets that I give, those are, I think, the positive side that has been mentioned by the professor. And they said it has increased awareness that online learning is a necessity and also effective. But on the downside, this red dot said that it has increased time space of learning because of the using the LMS, using the asynchronous, communication, and that has posed more challenges for professors. Professors are felt under pressure to give response immediately, even though they didn't have to. When they say open, there's a new question, in the discussion group, they felt like they have to respond immediately. And then it poses higher challenge in building academic atmosphere, in delivering the content, and also in facilitating discussion and interaction among students. One professor said it's difficult to conduct and facilitate practical works. I think this is the biggest problem for Indonesian learning during the COVID. Some are pending, some are using video, some are using simulation, but mostly pending. And some professors mentioned that they needed more robust institutional infrastructure. I think this is also mentioned by Angela. For example, many universities don't have LMS in place yet when it started, and they don't have media development support to help them develop the content. And also some professors just don't have the necessary training to do the online teaching. They don't know how to communicate in the online learning environment. They don't know how to motivate the student in the online learning environment. And one professor from the psychology field, I remember, said that it's like of human touch. And according to her, it's jeopardizing the human relation capability building. So that what is lacking. And then one professor, this is from the, I think it's, he is the professor in language, in English, said it's so challenging in terms of validating student authenticity and honesty. Because I think not many professors have the technology in place in their university to help them doing the authenticity and honesty check for their students. So in summary, I think amidst the COVID, learning continues in Indonesia. It's not probably the most ideal online learning, the most ideal distance learning. It's the emergency online learning, but it did work. It did help students and prevent students from dropping out. COVID-19, I think it has revealed our system vulnerabilities, but it has also served as extraordinary human resourcefulness and potential. And one thing has been emphasized. One thing that is not believed by many people before the COVID, that professor can change. Many people believe professors cannot change because they are too smart. but COVID has shown us that professor can change. COVID-19 has accelerated the adoption and the belief of online learning. It has converted the non-believer to become active players, and that is huge. That is the huge blessing of the COVID-19. So COVID-19 has increased students and professor interest in blended and online learning. So now what's next? COVID still here. As you see, this is the latest data, well, 2 days ago, from the World Health Organization. The dark color, shows that it's still very much there. And then the progress of vaccination is still far away from reaching the herd immunity. On average, worldwide, only 1.3% of world population has received full vaccination. And only Europe, US, UAE, and some Latin American countries has started vaccination to more than 30% of population. Indonesia, only 1.8% of population has received full vaccination. Thank goodness, including me. So
Professor,
I don't know.
Can we wrap up?
Has received that.
Can you kindly wrap up?
Yes, I'm wrapping up. So
Okay.
I guess online education is here to stay. We cannot return to the way it was before. So how to sustain and mainstream it? We have to revisit these 5 issues: definition of education, equity and inclusion, connectivity, access to learning resources, and digital divide, digital literacy. These 5 issues have to be tackled. And specifically, I would like to emphasize on this one thing mentioned among others by UN and UNESCO, that we have to expand the definition of the right to education to include connectivity entitlement. I think this is very fundamental. We have to redefine what we mean by the right to education to include connection to the internet. So that's what I would like to share. Thank you very much for listening. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor. And thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh as well. Professor Tian, I would like to personally to thank you, and of course, on behalf of everybody, on sharing with us the great and interesting surveys that have been done in Indonesia and at the different times, showing us basically what we have been all concerned with, and maybe what is going on, so that we all know that we're not the only ones suffering, but everybody has the same concerns and maybe the same problems as well. And yes, people relying on WhatsApp is not really something that, particularly as a professor and as a quality assurance, we cannot rely on that. Professor, some of the few interesting things that come up with is your concern on the online experience, particularly relying on WhatsApp and the free platforms. At the same time, you shared with us that how we all plunged into this without being prepared, whether we were teachers or students, but as time passed on, everybody accepted and everybody came along and everybody changed. You are concerned about the lack of human touch, which is actually one of the things that we are all concerned about, and the changing form of education and how it is we might be experiencing a paradigm shift, which you concluded with, that we have to redefine education and to include inclusion and equity and access to and the connectivity. So thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. And again, we will share the questions after all our presentations. And now allow me to present our final presentation for the day, which will be shared by Professor Riham Magdi Amin, Vice Dean for Community Service, Faculty of Engineering at the British University in Egypt, and who is also Professor of Oral Biology and Course Coordinator in the Faculty of Dentistry at Ain Shams University. She also served as Deputy Director of the Quality Assurance Unit in Ain Shams University. And Professor Fardoos Nabil Riz, who is the Vice Dean for Teaching and Learning, also at the Faculty of Dentistry at the British University in Egypt. She's also Professor of orthodontics and serves as the program director and head of the department. She is also program director and clinic instructor in the membership of restorative dentistry, recognized by the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. Professors, the Zoom is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Johansson. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning, distinguished participants, board members and colleagues. Let me first begin with sharing my screen. It's really give me a great honor to have the chance to participate in this great webinar. And thank you all distinguished speakers for sharing their experience. This is Riham Magdi, Professor and Vice Dean for Community Service, Head of Infection Control Unit, the Faculty of Dentistry, the British University in Egypt. In my presentation, I will focus on presenting our faculties, the hybrid teaching learning experience from the infection control perspective. So the title of my presentation is Returning of Teaching and Learning Process in the Era of COVID-19, Infection Control Challenges and Clinical Implications. Due to COVID-19 pandemic situation, teaching and learning process, especially in practical faculties, has faced many challenges. So in this presentation, it was thought about sharing few information about COVID-19 virus, giving with a bird's eye view the protective measures taken for on-campus activities during the pandemic situation, presenting hybrid teaching and learning plan that was followed in our faculty. So our challenges as a practical faculty were applying strict preventive measures for the on-campus activities, teaching and learning, to protect our students, staff members, and patients, and this will be discussed by me, and to proceed with an efficient teaching and learning process. This will be discussed by my colleague, Professor Fardoos, in the following presentation. Now, let me present the infection control preventive measures taken against COVID-19 in our faculty during the teaching and learning process. The world is now facing an ultimate surprising spreading challenge and a global crisis, which is 2019 novel coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic, which affect millions of lives around the world. Since the most of dental procedures require close contact with the patient's oral cavity and saliva, which could be loaded with virus, dental healthcare professionals, dental assistants, as well as patients undergoing dental procedures are at a high risk of cross-infection. Thus, this pandemic forced dental sector to stop and take serious precautions and preventive procedures. Due to the pandemic situation and in accordance with our government's decision, the British University in Egypt announced and started applying contingency plan for students and staff safety. Since the early beginning, the Faculty of Dentistry shared responsibilities, and our faculty founding dean took the decision to begin our steps towards the awareness and the protective measures against COVID-19 virus, following WHO and the local authority guidelines. These steps were strictly monitored by the faculty infection control team. The faculty infection control team was nominated from the faculty infection control unit members due to COVID-19 pandemic situation for monitoring the preventive measures taken against COVID-19. This team included coordinator responsible for awareness, a clinician for hospital infection control, coordinator for each clinic for reporting with a checklist about the fulfillment of infection control measures. This team reports the infection control committee. Regular Zoom meetings and monthly reports are presented by the infection control coordinators of each clinic, and these reports are discussed in the faculty infection control committee meeting for taking actions and reporting to the Faculty Council for the best infection control results, especially during the COVID pandemic. The first step against COVID-19 was taken early, focusing on the increasing the awareness of virus nature and applying preventive measures against it. And this was achieved through awareness lectures targeting students at different degrees, interns, staff members, nurses, and admins, including information about the virus and the way of protection. Awareness videos were regularly played in screens in the clinics. Preparing lecture halls, study, and prayer areas with social distancing and visual guiding signs about important preventive guidelines. Frequent disinfection for labs, clinics, waiting areas, and the buildings were done daily for 3 times. The following some of the preventive measures taken against COVID-19 for on-campus examination period. The university had released video for general guidelines and preventive measures done in the university against COVID-19 and the steps to be followed by students during on-campus examination period. Also, all were provided by the university for the protection for proctors as well as student safety. In addition, guiding videos were released from the faculty infection control for the guidance to be followed by the staff members as well as students during the faculty examination period. In addition, Students' Union shared with a video for confirming these protective measures. Accordingly, all precautions were taken during examination period as seen in the photos. The following are the preventive measures for on-campus teaching and learning process. After the Minister of Higher Education decided undergraduate students to begin hybrid teaching and learning and that students will partially attend on campus, a protocol as well as a regulation manual for returning on campus was released to guide the students for the preventive measures to be taken. All preventive measures were followed for safe on-campus teaching and learning process. The following are preventive measures for dental practice in the hospital, which included all recommended preventive measures for dental care professionals were included in faculty manual, which were regularly updated and distinguished and disseminated for all staff interns as well as senior students. Hospital was prepared with visual signs to provide simple instructions for the patients about hand and respiratory hygiene. All dental practitioners in the faculty clinics are strictly adherent for using the personal protective equipment with ensuring clinical aeration and frequent aerosol aspiration use. Also, preventive measures were also followed by the staff members as well as the students of higher degree year in our faculty medical convoys for offering community service. Further trials were done for being and carried out for more infection control in the hospital clinics. Prototype for patient shields are under trials in the faculty as well as UV and hydrogen peroxide disinfecting machines were under trials for more efficient disinfection procedures. Before I end my presentation, kindly allow me to express my deepest thanks for our great mentor, Professor Tariq Abbas, founding dean of the British University of Faculty of Dentistry, British University in Egypt, for his continuous support and guide for our faculty towards achieving great success in the field of community service. Thank you, and please allow me to give the other part of the presentation to my colleague, Professor Fardoos Rizq.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, dear guests. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Professor Johansson, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me and my colleague, Professor Reham Magdi, to this webinar. It is really our pleasure. Me and my colleague, Professor Reham Magdi, worked in close coordination, hand in hand, to enhance the teaching and learning process in the Faculty of Dentistry, the British University in Egypt, under the required infection control measures during the catastrophe of COVID-19. Please allow me to share my screen to present how the teaching and learning process went during this period. This is me, Ferdows Rizk, the Vice Dean for Teaching and Learning and the Exam Officer of the Faculty of Dentistry in the British University. My presentation will include how the hybrid teaching and learning process went through the catastrophe of COVID-19, which included campus closure, and we had to reduce the number of students in our faculty. So how we dealt with these problems. The agenda for the teaching and learning process included 4 main domains. The teaching process, which included lectures and practical work, the assessments, which were carried through various ways by online assessment, researches and projects, and also on-campus assessments, which required electronic exam correction. The teaching and learning process was followed with smooth communication between students and staff through survey reports, meetings with the student union and student representatives, complaints by emails, and impaired performance arrangements. Of course, the BUE teaching and learning team had to work in coordination and efficiency and had to monitor the teaching and learning process through committees and IT coordinators. I will start by the teaching process. First, the lectures. How were they given? For degree year 1, the freshman students, and degree year 5, our senior students, we chose to work with them dual lectures, which meant that the lectures were given on campus and online at the same time for students who cannot attend. But social distancing was a must, and all personal protective measures and wearing masks was a must. Of course, under the supervision of the infection control unit of the Faculty of Dentistry, the lectures were disinfected in every interval. For degree year 2, degree year 3, degree year 4, we chose online lectures, but it was through Zoom, and the lectures were live, where interaction between the professors and the students was allowed, and students were obliged to open their cameras, and attendance was taken. Zoom timetable for the online lectures was announced to students, and the British University facilitated Zoom domains for the Faculty of Dentistry. Moving from the lectures to the practical work, where students had to be on campus, but with reduced number. No one was allowed to step in campus or in the hospital without having his body temperature measured. Awareness videos were played in the clinics before starting work. Then, students were allowed to practice on patients, but with full personal protective equipments and following social distancing protocols. In case of not having patients due to COVID conditions, the senior students had patients mannequin in the clinics where they were allowed to practice on them as if practicing on human beings, but also with full personal protective measures and following social distancing. Of course, the work was observed and supervised by our staff members. In all our clinics, we had aspirators for aspiring the aerosols and ensuring healthy environment free of infection. And following the WHO guidelines, the clinics were disinfected and cleaned in every interval under the supervision of our infection control units. Moving from the clinical years, degree year 4 and 5, to the preclinical years, degree year 1, 2, and 3.
Professor Ferdows, can I ask you to kindly wrap up because we're running out of time? Thank you very much.
Yes. The practical work was carried in the labs. Students had the facility to see their demos as videos on the e-learning system of our faculty. Also, they could make their practical work and send it to their supervisors for assessment on the e-learning. Moving from this to the assessment, Professor Johansson?
Yes?
Do you want to ask me something?
Yes, I just wanted to say that we need to wrap up because we're running late.
Could I have 3 more minutes?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Moving from the teaching process to the assessments, assessments were carried in various ways. Online assessments, also researches and products with Turnitin program to check plagiarism, and in case of on-campus, social distancing protective measures were taken, and to lessen the hand contact, the exam papers were corrected electronically. The teaching and learning process couldn't have gone smoothly and successfully without communication between staff and students. Through survey reports, following campus closure, hybrid teaching and learning, online process, and there was positive response not only from students, but also from staff. Zoom meetings were held in the presence of the dean and the vice deans and the head of departments and students for any obstacles and issues to be solved at once during this period. The complaints committee were working on daily basis to answer any complaints via emails, and any impaired performance for COVID was followed and make-up was done for the students. Finally, the BOE teaching and learning team worked efficiently together and strictly monitored this process by Zoom meetings on weekly basis and sending reports to the vice president of the University for Teaching and Learning and to the dean. And our IT coordinators of the dentistry and of the university closely monitored the attendance and the Zoom lectures of students. So, the teaching process, followed by assessments, monitored by the BOE teaching and learning team, followed by communication between staff and students, went in good and perfect integration during this catastrophe. And this is due to teamwork and integration. I would also like to thank our founding dean, Professor Tara Abbas. Without his global vision and support, we couldn't have reached this unique level of teaching and learning to give the best quality of graduates in Egypt. Thank you, our esteemed attendees, and thank you, Professor Johansen.
Thank you, Professors Riham and Professor Firdaus, for sharing with us this one interesting presentation about actual measures that have been taken during the pandemic in one of the universities. So from what has been done for actually preventing or taking preventive measures to protect the students, which is one of the important things that we as professors have to take care of, to how they have conducted teaching and learning during the pandemic, and what were the measures taken, and how assessment was conducted to the use of mannequins in the clinics, in particular this very tricky business of dentistry, which is actually one of the businesses or one of the disciplines that can easily spread the pandemic. And how the use of Zoom meetings and lecturing, and showing us how that all this has been done with integration and with teamwork. So thank you very much, both of you. And I would like now to move on to our discussants, so that because we are kind of running out of time right now. So I would like to ask our discussants to limit their talks to 5 minutes. Our first discussant is Mr. Bagus Anugrah Yoga Pramtu, who is the scholarship officer at Nufi Nizu, Indonesia. He's an uprising writer and occasional book reviewer, and currently working for the implementation of individual application of student scholarship program, and which is StuNet, and he's a former awardee of the EU Share Indonesia. Mr. Bagus, the Zoom is yours.
Okay, thank you, Professor Johansen 8, for the brief introduction. And I would also like to thank the IQA for inviting me to become one of the discussants for this webinar session. So maybe I will limit my talk to 5 minutes according to the instruction from the committee, since we have limited time right now. So we cannot deny that student mobility is one of the most affected part of the education system by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the EU Share awardees. And I had experience to study for 1 semester at Hue University in Vietnam. And I often wonder that there is this one question that were often asked to me, and I also had opportunity to ask this question to my fellow EU Share awardees about what is the most important benefit that you get through your international student mobility experience. And apparently, most of them answers the question with rather similar answer, that it is not about the education experience that they get inside the classroom or the exposure to international student experience, but rather they answer that the most important point that they get through their international student mobility experience is about their international exposure to a foreign culture, and also the networking that they gain through their experience. So I have this unique story that prior to my decision to apply for EU Share Scholarship and study in Vietnam for 1 semester. So in my hometown, when some of my neighbors found out that I was going to Vietnam for studying, they have mixed responses. Some of them congratulate me for the choice, while there are also some of them who warned me that it is dangerous to go to a communist country, because apparently their perspective about Vietnam is mainly shaped through the media, and also there is a negative connotation about communism in Indonesia since the failed coup d'etat from the Indonesian Communist Party in 1965. And apparently, I wanted to go to Vietnam and see for myself whether the stereotypes are true, because apparently, even for myself, my perspective about Vietnam at the time was formed through Western movies that are available, like Forrest Gump or Apocalypse Now, to note some. And upon my arrival in Vietnam, I got surprised by what I have seen through my two eyes, that it was not as bad as what portrayed in the movies that I've watched before. Like Vietnam, it turns out that it's not a war-torn country at all, but I have witnessed that even most of my classmates at that time use iPhones and MacBooks, which is really surprising to me at that time, that I encountered something completely different to what I saw before. So it makes me think that student mobility abroad is a good chance for international students in many parts of the world to observe for themselves another culture, besides the benefits of gaining exposure to different educational system. But they will also get new perspectives, especially about interacting in a different culture, about adaptation, and also gaining international networking, which will be useful for future references. And I have been thinking that the networking part is especially important after graduation, since we could not deny that there are many students who gained their first career job through networking. And even for me, I was fortunate enough to gain my first job right now due to the networking that I have during college, that one of my friends happened to notice the job posting and shared to me. And I think that is the most important aspects of student mobility. And this COVID-19 pandemic apparently changed the landscape of classroom conducts, that most of the classes are conducted online or through hybrid learning. And there are also travel restrictions imposed that hinder traveling from one country to another, matter of impossibility. So this is a wake-up call for all of us that COVID-19 pandemic is indeed, as the previous speakers have mentioned, that it is something which exposed the worst of the society in which we live, but it is also a moment to sit back and reflect about what we can do to make things better, especially for the international student mobility, which is heavily affected by this COVID-19 pandemic. And yeah, we are here to discuss about and try to find a workable solution for all of us. So that is my thought for today. Thank you. I will give back the floor to Professor Johansson.
Thank you very much for these wonderful aspiring words, and it's wonderful always to hear a different experience and a different view from that of professors, and but actually from the learning experience from the actual field. Thank you very much, Mr. Bogus. And now we go to listen also to the experience of the students from Mr. Ahmad Mujahid bin Mohammed Aslan, who is a final year student of electrical power at the University Tenaga Nacional, and he is the university's Students Representative Council for 2021. He is also an active member of the Majlis Perundingan Pelajar Kebangasan from 20 to forgive me. From 20 to 21, and he's director of MC Ventures at the Uniten from 2019 to 2020. He was also an active member of the Nimbaga discipline Pelajar from 2012 to 2016. Mr. Ahmad, you have the Zoom is yours, and kindly limit your contribution to 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
All right, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So for now, I will be sharing my experience throughout the journey in COVID-19 lah. So for me, journey throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, it is a once in a lifetime journey for me, a journey like no other. It teaches you many things, but only if you are willing to be taught. So from this journey, we learn so many things, so many lessons that we can put in our life. All right. First thing first, I would like to thank the IQA International Webinar for inviting me for this Students Learning Amidst Global Pandemic and Beyond sharing session. So a little bit about me. I actually have prepared a slide, but because the time is not enough, I will just talk, all right? So first thing first, my background. My name is Ahmad Mujahid Mazlan. I am 22 years old and I am from Kelantan, Malaysia. Eventually, among all the speakers for today's session, I am the only one from Malaysia. So inshallah, I will be bringing Malaysia's name and make it proud, inshallah. So I am from University Tenaga Nasional, currently taking Bachelor of Electrical Power Engineering. And in Unitan, I am the current president of Student Representative Council. So what we do, we will discuss with the management, we will bring the voice of the student to the management. And also, for now, for today, I will share about my experience throughout the learning process, the online learning process. Before I move to my experience, I would like to highlight few important dates or timeline throughout the pandemic COVID-19. So, from sources from WHO timeline COVID-19, the first case of COVID-19 was reported in 31st December 2019 in Wuhan. And then in Malaysia, the first case of COVID-19 was reported during 25th of January from 3 travelers who arrived in Johor via Singapore. So after that, after so long time, then we can see the rise of cases in Malaysia. And eventually, the very first movement control order was issued on 80th of March 2020. So from there, we can see from the 25th of January, the first ever case reported, until the 80th of March, the first ever movement control order has been issued in Malaysia. So next, from the first movement control order, eventually all the students were having online learning session. So starting from 80th March lah. So now I would like to focus on my experience throughout the online learning. So for this experience, I would like to divide it into 3 parts, which is the beginning, second part, the new norm, and the final part, which is the future. All right, the first one, about the beginning of this COVID-19 experience, about this beginning of the online learning. The first, I still remember on the 60th of March, 60th of March is 2 days before Malaysia issued its first movement control order. So at that time, on 70th, I have the first ever, my first paper, I have a test at that time. And on 60th, I was studying, I was preparing for my test. And then on 70th, they have announced about the first movement control order. So that exam was postponed. So I spent my time at library studying at that time. And suddenly, I still remember the students were a bit, I would say, fast and ruckus all over the place because nobody knows what is happening and nobody knows what's going to be happening and so on. Firstly, initially, the government announced for only 2 weeks of movement control order. So during those 2 weeks, all the classes were stopped, whereby not even a single classes were conducted, even online, because initially it was only for 2 weeks. Suddenly, at the end of the 2 weeks of first movement control order, the government have released announcement that the movement control order will be continued even after the 2 weeks. For the next 2 weeks, they will continue it. So eventually, I would like to thank our government, Malaysia's government, and also Unitan, because they have they move very fast. They have made a fast decision whereby they decided to continue the learning and to use online platform. So from there, firstly, initially, we weren't sure about which platform to use. Some lecturers use Zoom, some lecturers use Google Meet, and many other platforms that has been used by the lecturers. So from this platform, the students are confused because there are so many platforms for each subject, different platform. So therefore, we can see the depletion of students' skills and depletion of student punya I'm sorry, my Malay came out. I would say the students were, the focus suddenly gone. So because so many platforms were used at the time, from that time, the Uniten have made a drastic decision whereby they have decided to use Microsoft Teams platform, the main platform for the student for their online learning. So through when Uniten have subscribed to this platform, we can see the students are getting used to the online platform because all the subjects will only use one platform, which is Microsoft Teams platform. All right, so throughout the process, I still remember first movement control order started during March. And then at that time, I wasn't having laptop actually at that time because I came from a not so rich family. And it's very hard for us to use laptop. Plus, I have to borrow from my friends, I have to borrow from my teachers, from my sister, and so on. But starting from March, I have no one. I only have myself. So I decided to went back to my uncle's house. Even though I went back to my uncle's house, I still remember because at that time my uncle also have to use the laptop because the staff also work from home, so they have to be online from home. So I can only use recording session. I can only watch recording session at night because at night my uncle's not using the laptop because office hour ends by 5 p.m. So the only time for me to surf through my study is only at night, and not directly with my lecturer, but from recording session. So it was a bit hard back then. It was so hard. And I wouldn't recall it as a pleasant memory for me, because if I recall back, I can see how I have to drop a few of the subjects because I cannot follow up, since the only time for me to study is only at night. That is the only time I have access to the recording. All right, and also different from the physical platform, this online platform, initially, nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows how to conduct the session, even the lecturers, even the student. So the lecturers are having this one mindset that we, the students, are at home. So there is not, we do nothing, we just sit at home. Therefore, in every end of class session, the lecturer will give us assignments. For example, if I have 5 subjects, and then these 5 subjects for a day, I will have 2 classes. So if these 2 classes do assignments, so in one day I will have 2 assignments. So in 1 week, 5 classes times by 2, I will have 10 assignments to be submitted. So that is the example because initially nobody knows how it's going to be conducted, and the lecturers thought that we are only at home. Even though we are at home, we actually have to sit from 8 morning in front of our laptop from 8 in the morning until 12, and then recess for Zuhur prayer. And then I have to continue back my session at 2 until 5 in front of the laptops. Even before this, there is a statement by the mental health, whereby the students punya mental health is not so good, since they are just sitting in front of laptops, less connection with the outsiders, and so on. And also, during the beginning part of the online learning, I would like to highlight the experience by those who lived in rural areas. For me, I am considered lucky even though I don't have laptops, but I still live in urban area, so my internet connection is stable. But for those who lived in rural areas, there is this one time whereby the university, there is one student who lived in Sabah, Malaysia. They have to climb a trees to access the internet. So this is how bad it is at the initial beginning of the online learning, the experience of us. All right, so that I hope that explains the beginning of the online learning in Malaysia, whereby nobody is used to it. Everyone is just testing it, just like what Professor Tian mentioned just now. People are forced, no matter if they are ready or not, they have to go through online learning. So that is what happening at the beginning. Eventually, as time goes by, as each day pass, we can see that the government and the KPT is our Ministry of Higher Education. the Ministry of Higher Education have decided to adapt to this new norm lah, whereby the learning system is more stable, and also the problems have been encountered, and I can see even the universities are starting to accepting students to come inside again with safety measures lah, that the student before they enter the campus, they have to be undergo the isolation period to make sure that you are healthy enough before you can enter the campus lah. So with all, and also I would like to highlight about Unitan. I'm not sure about any other university in Malaysia, but for Unitan, since I am the student of Unitan, they have construct a team called COVID-19 Task Force. So this COVID-19 Task Force is responsible for all the case, for all the issue of, for all the welfare of the student, if it's regarding the COVID-19. For example, if the student want to come inside, they have to contact the COVID-19 Task Force. This is very helpful for the students, because I would like to give you a scenario. If I am a student and I would like to come inside the campus, I don't know who to contact, because this is a new thing. So with this construction of COVID-19 Task Force, now we know, the student knows who to contact if you want to come inside. If there is positive cases inside the campus, we know who to contact, which is COVID-19 Task Force. This COVID-19 Task Force consists of the management of Unitan, whereby all the decision in Unitan is not only made by one person, but the whole group of COVID-19 Task Force. And also to ensure that the online learning process in Unitan.
Mr. Ahmad, we need to wrap up because we're running
okay, sure. I will wrap
out
up.
of time.
All right.
Okay.
To ensure that the COVID-19 learning, the online learning in Unitan is as efficient as possible, Unitan also have come up with a student violet, whereby it's a platform for them to monitor the online learning between the students. So that is how the second part of my experience in online learning, the new norm, whereby we are adapting to this situation. And the final part I would like to wrap up, which is the future. For the future, I'm not sure about the compatibility and the efficiency of this online learning, but I would like to highlight about the pros and cons. So let's go to the pros first, which is can do class. The first pros is can do class at any time. If the lecturer is not having enough time, they still can do class because they can give their recording to the students, and also they don't have to commute to the workplace. They just can open their laptop and immediately conduct a session for the student. That is the first benefit. Second benefit is easy to access, because just like I mentioned, the lecturer doesn't have to commute to the workplace, and also the student doesn't have to commute also to the workplace. They can access from their room. And the third benefit is less budget for the university. Because why less budget for the university? Because they only have to subscribe for the teams. They don't have to pay for the electricity fees. They don't have to pay for the.
Ahmad, we really need to
all right, okay, sure. I'm sorry. Okay, so that is the benefit, I would say. But nevertheless, there is also a cons from these things, which is the session cannot be conducted efficiently, and there will be connection problems. So I mentioned just now. So to wrap up, basically, this journey has been a very meaningful process for all of us, only and only if we are willing to learn from it. And I believe to move forward, we should not leave this online platform behind. Just like what one of the speakers have mentioned just now, it's a one-way ticket, whereby this online platform will be there for the rest of the time. But nevertheless,
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad, for this wonderful discussion, and for giving us the viewpoint of from the students' point of view. And I'm sorry that I have to cut you off, okay, but unfortunately we are running out of time. And the reason I did not, I mean, all the presentations, all discussions were very interesting. That's why we had to keep them going for some time. We probably don't have much time for questions, but I will sum up the questions from our questions basically fall into two categories. The first one is for Professor Tian, and basically most of these questions are talking about how do we assess virtual confectionery, the virtual assessment will be done for virtual confectionery learning, and how to monitor and evaluate the learning process in open university to control quality of learning. And also, and the two questions have been coming up about the practical lessons and how are the teaching tools and the assessment. So Professor Tian, if you can share with us your insights on that, maybe in a couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm now already in the car. I'm sorry if my signal is not as stable before. Yes, thank you for the question. I think assessment is definitely a challenge for people who are not used to deliver learning at a distance. But thanks to technology, I think right now, actually there are many software that can help us doing the assessment for students. As well, we also now have a lot of platform and also software to help us doing with the supervising of the exam. I believe now the technology is available for online proctoring and then also even online marking. So, you know, compared to what it was when the technology is not as advanced, I think now we have a lot of help. But of course, we have to really design it. We cannot just jump into, and when it comes to assessment system, it's better that is decided and standardized university-wide at the institutional level and not be left to the individual professors, because then it will not be standardized. And for online learning, if we learn from the best practice of distance online learning, conventional distance online learning, the assessment item has also been developed in such a way so that it can be validated and it can be calibrated, and it's stored in the what we call it's the item bank system. Only that way then we can say that our examination and our assessment system is quite robust. I think that is to answer about the assessment. And about the practical works, well, you know, for distance education and online education in the old normal time, we usually or we could collaborate with the local laboratoriums or local institution which has labs. For example, in our case in the Open University, we collaborate with high school, with vocational school, with local universities. But when we cannot, you know, when we can't be present physically, then we have to rely on simulations, using video. There are also technologies, but quite not as many. It's what we call remote laboratories. So remote laboratories will allow students to do the actual hands-on practical works, but the labs is at a distance, perhaps in the headquarters of the campus, whatever. But that also would need some preparation, some installment, some planning, and also budget. I think just to, you know, answer it in 2 minutes, I hope that would to some extent answer the questions.
Yes, thank you very much. It actually has. Thank you very much. And I apologize because we've been running late.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay. The second set of questions are directed to the British University and particularly Professor Ferdows. It's some of the questions are about what types of simulation methods are most efficient for clinical education. We also have a question from Egypt. Why do you offer the same lecture twice for your students, face-to-face and online? And finally, from Indonesia, there's a question about, do you think that hybrid learning method can upgrade students' knowledge or not? Professor Ferdows, Professor Riham, yes, can you please address these questions?
Yes, regarding the dual lectures, which is why on campus and why online, we chose this system for the freshman students and the senior students, not all the degrees. The freshman students, because they asked, we started with them first online, but they asked that they want to take the university experience of on-campus lectures. So we divided them into 2 groups and allowed every group to be a small number in a big lecture hall. And at the same time, for those students who are afraid to come, we gave them the option of online lectures, not depriving them of anything. For example, if they have a disease or if they have any immunosuppressive thing and they don't want to come. As for the freshmen, this was carried out for the senior students because it is their last experience, their last university experience, and their last on-campus experience. So we gave them this choice to be whether on campus or online at the same time. This is why we chose these 2 years and we chose the dual method of teaching. The second question, Professor Johansson?
The second question was about the, do you think, what types of simulation methods are most efficient for clinical education?
Of course, working on human being is the best, but this is not always the case. Now in COVID period, we cannot allow, we used to receive 100 patients daily in our hospital. With COVID, we decreased the number of patients. We decreased it to 1/3. So I had to have another option, which is the patient mannequin, so that I could reduce the intake of patients and at the same time not affect the quality of dental practice in my hospital. So I went to the patient mannequin.
Okay, and the final question?
In the preclinical years, I gave the option of attending the lab on campus or seeing the demonstration by video. And I gave the option of practicing on campus under the supervision of the teaching assistants or working at home and sending their work by photos on the e-learning for anyone who cannot attend on campus.
Yes, okay. If you would allow me, Professor Faidus, I had an experience in my module. I'm teaching the module of human dentition. It's a practical module. So the students at the total lockdown, they had to see the videos, demos, and they take short video for their practical work, and they send it to us as a staff members so that to evaluate and send our comments to them. Thank you, Professor Faidus. You can proceed.
There was a third question, Professor Johansson.
Yeah, the final question is, do you think that hybrid learning method can upgrade students' knowledge or not?
I think hybrid teaching and learning method was a successful method during the COVID time. And I think that our graduates did not miss any of the practical work. But still, full attendance in the university and enjoying the environment of the university and enjoying the university experience and the university hub is still something that we have to say is very important, not only for the education or for the dental practice, but for the psychology of our students. The university life is something that couldn't be missed.
Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe we also have one final question, and I'll address that to all the panelists, if anybody could share, is that what do you think about the future of LMS after the pandemic is over? Will it continue to exist? Or do you think that we will go back to the regular face-to-face teaching or traditional, what things used to be before the pandemic? And this, I just leave it to if anybody of the panelists can discuss this or address this question.
I think from my point of view that the hybrid teaching and learning method was a successful method, as I said before, and it covered the practical work and it covered the theoretical work, but all from the surveys of all professors that were carried out through these years, students and staff think that it was successful, but they hope to go to our full on-campus experience, staff and students.
And maybe finally, Professor Faidus, there's a question, are the policies implemented in the British University consistent with the Egyptian government regulations? And is there a barrier during the learning process that makes the program ineffective?
Yes, of course, there was a process. First, we were asked during the campus closure to work online, and we made a full report on our COVID period, the online teaching and learning period, in the period of 2019-2020. And this report was submitted to the NACA unit. And also, we were asked by the government to shift, starting the academic year 2020 and 2021, to the hybrid teaching and learning method. And we were asked to give a full report about how the first semester was covered during this period of time.
Okay.
So, of course, we are working in coordination and following the rules of the government.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And I apologize for going over time, but I think the contributions and of all our panelists were really wonderful. And maybe that's why I couldn't cut them short very easily. So I hand it back to Professor Basuruddin. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johansson. I think we have to send it back to our MC, the master of ceremony.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Johansson Waid, and all of the speakers. The session was very remarkable and wonderful, and there are so many to learn from the session. And ladies and gentlemen, we are reaching the end of our session today. Before you go, we would like to invite you to participate to our second session of this second series of the webinar discussing faculty experiences and challenges that will be held on Tuesday, April 6, 2021. And you can access the link in s.id/IQA registration. And of course, for anyone who wishes to receive a certificate for today's event, you can access them through link s.id/certificate IQA 2021-series 2-1. Thank you for coming to this session today. I hope there are plenty of things we could learn today amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. May Allah save us and make us stronger going through this pandemic through years. On behalf of our committee of IQA webinar series, I am Ananda Yusri Ardini, signing off from Yogyakarta. Have a nice day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you all. And thank you for the wonderful preparation, and thank all panelists and discussants.
Thank you. And thank you.